have control over the left side of your body, while I feel dominant on the right. Oh, let go of that.
Oh, bitch! How about a little respect for the deceased?
Well, sometimes you can't get out and about as much as you would like to. You're stuck in for some reason, like I'm stuck in today. And then, yes, you get bored and you get fed up with looking at the same four walls.
He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. Here he goes. Do it. Do it. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, get him nice and clean, you son of a bitch. So satisfying. I got it. Now, what are we doing? What are we doing now?
Tight, cramped places.
That's, I have nowhere to go with that.
Me either. Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are the Cinemaniacs.
Cinemaniacs.
So we're back after a week off.
Yes, and we both saw something similar. No,
We
well,
did.
not even movies, but we'll get to that later.
We both attended a special presentation in a different part of the region, which
Indeed.
we will talk about. We will tease that. We will dangle that carrot if we ever get to it at the end of the movies. We'd have to talk about, because there
Yes.
are a lot.
There are 10 of them.
Shall
week.
I?
You should
Oh,
be better
boy.
because it's your turn.
Thank you. So, it's all of your favorite DC heroes, more or less, coming together to fight this week's end of the world problem. They call themselves, I'm just going to get right to it, they call themselves the Justice League.
Snack bar, where we offer a wide variety of good things to eat and drink to top off your evening.
Okay, I thought I was going to hate this.
As did I.
That trailer played a lot, and I thought this looks stupid. The
Right.
CG looks terrible. It's like so much going on, I can't barely make out what's going on, and it's all that green screen halo haze around everybody, and oh, Lord, put me out of my misery before this movie comes out. So, it only helps to go into a theater with those expectations,
garbage,
because
yeah.
usually it's not quite as bad as that. And my take, as many people I've heard talk about this movie is, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I had an okay time with this movie because I thought I was going to hate every second of it. Let's discuss the upper lip, shall we? A little backstory. We don't have a lot of time in this episode, but Zack Snyder shot the majority of this film. Unfortunate family circumstances meant he had to drop out of the film. They brought in Joss Whedon, who had done the Avengers films, or at least one of them, to wrap things up and reshoot some things. They brought back Henry Cavill, who was working on the next Mission Impossible movie, had a full-on lip bush going on. He had a huge old mustache, and they decided they would digitally remove that. Well, it shows. It shows every time you see Superman, which also says to me, they must have reshot just about everything they originally did with Superman, because it was distracting. Like every time he was talking, it looked like when they try to make babies talk in commercials, his whole mouth looked animated.
Right, yeah.
It was really distracting.
It was a robot chicken kind of
Not to say that maybe Superman is in this movie. Maybe he isn't. Maybe I'm talking about something else.
Oh, you mean when she was remembering before he died?
All the flashbacks
Yeah,
of
all
Superman.
of those.
Sorry about that, folks. So that aside, which was really distracting and really bad looking.
Yep.
I had fun with this. It was a lot lighter in tone than I expected. The DC movies tend to be really, and this wasn't as much of that. I don't know.
I thought there was one character that made it not much of that. I thought the rest of it was and dark and grim.
It seemed like it had good jokes occasionally, or light tone. The cyborg character, who in the trailers I thought looked terrible with the CGI, worked pretty well for my eyes in the film, and as a character was better than I expected. Because there's a lot of this, mini origin story for everybody until we finally bring everybody together to fight, this week's end of the world.
Yeah, that took about an hour.
Which was like this entirely CGI bad guy, and I'm like, you couldn't put a guy in makeup and then make him larger via digital effects as opposed to this thing that doesn't look like it's really there. For me, the way I saw this film literally was a Saturday matinee, noon on a Saturday. As a Saturday matinee, I had a good time with this. I'd be up for more of these films. The costumes didn't look as bad as I thought they would. I thought the Flash looked really cheesy in the trailers, and I thought the character looked really annoying in the trailers. And I took him. He worked a lot better for me than I expected.
Okay.
You could say it's kind of weird that you have this very, very successful Flash TV show right now, and yet you cast somebody else in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
That's a little weird, but I don't know that I love Affleck as Batman in this movie. He seemed kind of sluggish, and I didn't really care about him too much. Wonder Woman was great. Again, when she was on screen, I'm like,
she steals the show.
You
all
don't
the time.
need these other guys.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
give me, I don't want to wait until allegedly 2019 for another Wonder Woman movie. Just give me more of that. So anyway, I'll let you speak your half of the conversation. But overall, probably fine for kids. Little dark at times. Some little
I don't.
innuendo, but it's not my endo. So I thought Justice League was fine as a matinee.
I thought I went in expecting to really despise this. The CG I thought was really pretty good. My major problem was that I was bored throughout the whole thing. We've seen the story all over again. Let's set up this unbelievably super powerful character that I didn't think made a lot of sense anyway. And he's got to find 4 boxes, and everybody. With the if you're in a suit, Wonder Woman isn't in a suit, and maybe not the Flash, but you have to be real digital. It's all this digital garbage voiceover that I found distracting. Not Ragnarok, but whoever the bad guy was, and I just figured it looked like Ragnarok because he looked like Ragnarok. Yeah. Has a bunch of flying spider monkeys, I just thought the whole thing was just really ludicrous. And granted, but you accept superpowered people and things like that. Yeah. Going in accepting that, I just thought the whole thing was just silly and stupid. I figured Cyborg and the Flash and Aquaman in particular have no business with the caliber of these other heroes. I've learned to like Affleck as both Bruce Wayne and Batman, and I thought he was kind of silly and the joke. I wanted to go in and give it a shot. I just thought it was a really lame attempt with all of the resources they had. When I saw Joss Whedon was associated with it and I didn't know the backstory, I was thinking, maybe the script will be a little bit decent. It was right at 2 hours long. It didn't drag, but
it didn't feel too long to me, and superhero movies often do.
Right, I agree. I was thinking that when I left, because I know you like them in an hour and a half.
Well, I mean, just to get on with my life more than anything else. Really.
I didn't think it dragged, but I just wasn't interested in any of it. I didn't find any of it new. I thought, oh my God, some of the dialogue with Lois and Ma Kent, Diane Lane,
that was not so great.
Early on was just painful. And there's, as you see, there's lines. Sorry to keep going at it, but half the time when they're in public, Batman is calling one of the characters by that character's real name, not to give away anything. And I'm like, so like everybody knows everybody's secret identities now? I just found that hard to believe. I just thought the whole thing was so out just to be a little lighthearted more, and I just didn't like it. Sorry.
But
didn't hate it, didn't like it.
But what they want to know is, are you going to buy the 4K?
Yeah. Just to see what it looks like.
It was terrible, but it's sharp.
But it looks great.
So did this film make you ponder anything?
Well, I was thinking after all of the battles and everything that they had, and the Flash in particular. Here's this demigod bad guy beating up on the Flash, who was basically just a kid. I thought he really would have gotten mangled and everything under that, and he would have needed a lot of plastic surgery. Yeah. Like our next character, poor little not 5-year-old, but 5th grader, entering into a new place, and he's had a lot of facial reconstruction and things like that with some problems. He's got to deal with it, and the amazing thing is that at the end of the film, he finds some friends, and it really makes you wonder.
And now, on with the show.
So all you really need to know about this is that it's from Walden Media. So if you're familiar with it, they're very selective. They put, it's not big budget, but they put the money that they need to put behind it to make a good movie. You get star cast. Owen Wilson was really good. Mandy Patinkin was terrific. I don't know the actor's name, but the guy who wrote and was Hamilton apparently is in it.
Lin-Manuel.
Something like that. I don't like Hamilton, so I avoid that. Julia Roberts is terrific. The kid, and I don't remember the little actor's name, but apparently he's the same one who was with Brie Larson in Room.
Jacob Tremblay, perhaps?
Probably that. So you get a good, solid base of actors from a very famous story. Walton does all that. And you bring it to the screen in a really wonderful way. Everything, this is really one of those what you see is what you get. It's a touchy, feely-good film. It's not overly sentimental or anything like that. But if you're familiar with some of the old Walden movies, Holes, those kinds of things.
Around the World in 80 Days, I believe.
It's this wonderful story about how everybody is different, and you learn to get along. And I thought this was one of those that I knew I had to go see. I wasn't dreading it. We see a lot of movies, as you know, that we kind of dread going to see. I wasn't dreading this, but I was thinking, oh, okay, am I going to pay my dues? And it was surprisingly good, which sounds like a backhanded compliment, but I thought Wonder was quite good.
I went to see this directly after Justice League on
you
Saturday, and I sat through the trailers, and then the Marvel logo came up, and I said, I'm in the wrong theater. So I missed this one because it said Thor right above the theater,
we
and for
still
some
have
reason
video.
I
That's the great thing about video.
I'm not that
Come
smart.
on, you still have a chance.
I forget how that whole movie thing works. Anyway, speaking of films about families and children and special children and the aftermath of things that happen with and without families and or the children they may have, we have a film that is playing the indie circuit right now, but I had a chance to see it at my beloved Alamo Drafthouse Yonkers recently. Film stars Nicole Kidman and Colin Farrell and more. And this film is
Not Roy Moore.
Not. Oh no,
okay.
no. We're going to avoid
wondering.
that. We're going to avoid getting.
Because there was a kid in our previous movies. Sorry.
Yucking it up with the political. Topical. Working topical. This film is entitled "The Killing of a Sacred Deer." So this is indie film.
Okay.
More like an art house film. This is not a mainstream audience kind of film, I don't think.
Okay.
This is from the
How'd
people.
they get Kidman and Firth? Is this one of those? Because we're going to be talking about one.
Yeah.
Where where stars take big budget salaries so they can do things like this.
I think so. It's challenging. It's interesting. It's well made. It's from the people who made a movie called The Lobster, which I didn't see, but I understand is kind of weird.
Yeah,
And this
you
movie
could
is kind of
say that.
weird. Basic setup. I don't want to get too far into it, but ideal family. Colin Farrell, wife Nicole Kidman, two or three lovely children. I forget, 2 lovely children, I think.
And one that isn't so
And
lovely.
then there's
Maybe he was in Wonder.
there's this boy that Colin Farrell keeps seeing and hanging out with and giving gifts to, and you wonder what this relationship is. I thought it was something a little untoward.
Okay.
But
Were we thinking it was a neighbor or something?
no, basically what happens is Farrell is a heart surgeon. You see open heart. By the way, film opens with open heart surgery. I'm at the Alamo, chowing down on a big old chicken sandwich, and I'm like, that's a heart. So I probably going to cool the red meat sales during this film. The basic premise, which none of the trailers get into, but we're friends, why not? The young boy that you see who's a little weird, and his delivery is weird. Like, what's wrong with this kid? Is he a robot, or is he a zombie, or what's going on? And the delivery of most dialogue in this film is very mundane, which bugged me after a while. Basically, Farrell had operated on this boy's father, and the guy died. And it is thought maybe he was drinking at the time, Farrell, and that he did something wrong and that led to his death. So he feels indebted to this boy and his mother.
Oh, okay.
And boy, I'll get into it. Okay, if you don't want to know anything more about this, then turn your TV off or turn your volume down for a second, mute the computer. Basically, the boy says, okay, here's the deal. You have to kill somebody in your family to even the score by such and such a time, or one by one, they're all going to get sick in these stages and they're all going to die, and it's all on you. And he doesn't believe the kid, and this stuff starts happening. So it's weird, it's supernatural, it's horror kind of. It's mostly grueling drama where this guy is having to make this awful decision. I ultimately found it a little slow and tedious after a while because it's like this slow pace, and the way the dialogue and the way this kid delivers everything sort of monotone. I was just like, get on with it. But a lot of people who've seen it really, really like it a lot. Okay. So it's certainly unusual. It's certainly worth seeing. I saw it on the big screen. I don't think it's necessarily going to suffer on the small
Sounds like
screen.
one that might work really well.
I think it would. I mean, in the big screen, to me, if you're in the theater, you're focused on the movie, I hope, and you can get sucked into it more than if you're home and you have all these distractions and you can pause it. So the strength of seeing it in the theater to me is that you can just get sucked into this weird world. At home, if most people have big TVs now, so it's not like sprawling vistas. I mean, it's mostly home and office and things like that. So anyway, Killing of a Sacred Deer is out now, and I guess I would recommend it if you like challenging films. This is the kind of film like The Colonial would get, or maybe The Latches. Our sponsor's The Latches. Speaking of murder.
Yes. Did he speak of murder? Kenneth Branagh brings us a little treat that you may have. Have you seen this story before? I'm not quite sure. bunch of people are on a train, and nefarious things suddenly become afoot when a very famous Belgian, not Frenchy, investigator has to figure out who committed the murder on the Orient Express.
No Showtime treat to equal the crisp, delicious flavor of hot popcorn that's bathed in real melted butter.
He's going to run for president too, I think, since
Does
he's so
look like
humble.
it looks like he's doing one of those old Teddy Roosevelt with the mustache, one of those speeches from the back of the caboose.
And that's kind of how I felt. I like Branagh a lot. This thing is just laden with spectacular actors. Not spectacular performances, strangely enough. I thought, I was looking forward to this. I certainly know the original movie and I've read the book. So for anybody who's looking for a surprise, if you've seen it or read it before, you're not going to get that. And I was worried that was going to detract from it. So going into it, I was thinking, well, it's just going to be so great to see these vistas and see these people doing it. And I thought this was very much style over substance. Branagh trying something new. And he's a wonderful director. I mean, he's done some terrific things and a phenomenal actor. But I found his approach to Poirot being kind of I'm the smartest guy in the world, and I can figure. I found that a little off-putting. And really, everybody else, all these terrific other actors, didn't have a lot to do.
No.
And so I was surprised that I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like Murder on the Orient Express.
My take from this, I realized, was like when Ringo was making albums in the 70s, and he brought all his friends in the studio, and you look at the list, and it's like Peter Frampton on guitar, Stevie Wonder on keyboards, somebody famous on Levon Helm on drums, the biggest people ever. But if the material is not great, it doesn't ultimately matter.
How well can you play it?
Exactly.
That guy played it just as well.
Yeah, it could have been session guys. So that's what I felt about this, is that when you look at the cast, it's an amazing cast, but most of them are just sitting down saying in medium shot, well, I don't know who did it. I mean, that's pretty much the movie.
Right.
And there's a little bit of like fun action in like Israel, I think, at the beginning of the film. Right. And you do see some vistas, but mostly it's on a train, and mostly it really is pretty tight shots of everybody. Ultimately, I don't know that I would say I was bored, but I didn't get really involved in this. And I've seen, the previous color film version of this, probably from the 70s, I'm assuming with Peter Ustinov.
Yes.
I know he did a couple of the other ones. And I didn't remember anything about that. So this was, story-wise, it was completely fresh to me. And before the movie was over, I kind of didn't care and wanted them to wrap it up.
Maybe it's because I hadn't just seen Justice League, but we're seeing all of these, Thor and Justice League. And as a society, we're so much more familiar with rapid action, quick cuts, short scenes, and short moments, that this one felt like a throwback to the 70s or 80s. Very long shots, very long scenes, and so it did kind of drag for me in that respect too.
And they totally angle for a sequel at the end. Either they're being cute, or they're like, we got the next adventure all ready to go, folks.
Right. And again, as odd as I thought his take on Poirot was, I like Branagh enough. I'd love to see it another one.
Speaking of murder, I'm not opposed to another one, by the way.
Another murder?
Yeah, well, not another murder, but this is one of those things where I didn't particularly care for this, but do another one and do it better.
Right.
And cool, that would be great.
Yeah.
I would love to see several of these. Go through the whole Agatha Christie. Nobody's made any of those movies in a long time.
It's true.
So, speaking of murder, you said murder. Who said murder? You said murder. I said murder. Hi, how are you? It's been a while. Hope you're doing okay. We have a film based on a graphic novel, based on graphic circumstances, that tells the teenage tale of a misfit who didn't fit and ultimately became a very well-known serial killer. Here is the not comedy, My Friend Dahmer.
My understanding of this, because you said this was based on the graphic novel, was that the filmmakers chose to make this about Jeffrey, because he had a brother, but they thought Jeffrey was just a little bit more intelligent, and they didn't want to make the movie about the Dumber Dahmer. Sorry. You'd said something about Jim Carrey originally being cast.
And then it was going to be called Dumb and Dahmer.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough
Daniels
levity,
was
because
gonna be
apparently
Dahmer.
this is not full of levity.
No, there are amusing moments, but it's not funny. So this is based on, as I said, on a graphic novel, which was written by a guy who hung out with Jeffrey Dahmer in high school. Apparently Dahmer was
one of the characters?
One of the characters in
Really?
the film. And funny enough, the library literally is directly above where we are recording this. We're in the library right now. So I looked it up, and I went upstairs, and I checked out the book, and I read it last week. So this is a rare occasion where I can, fresh in my head, talk about the film versus the book. The book is based on incidents that really happened with this guy who was a cartoonist then and then is a cartoonist now. And basically Dahmer was this isolated, just what you'd think he would be. Quiet, didn't have any friends, never talked to anybody. And then at some point in his junior high or high school career, he started just acting crazy goofy, just like bursting out with these weird spastic yells and things. And he sort of developed a following of people who thought he was funny and all of that. And they formed what they called the Jeffrey Dahmer fan club. And
wow.
Yeah, they were the Dahmer fan club. And he basically got this group of friends throughout high school. So it's about, it doesn't paint necessarily a sympathetic portrait of this guy who was evil and crazy, but you see the factors that led to where he ultimately was going to go.
Okay. And
you see the home life, which doesn't excuse any of this. It's interesting to see the making of a monster, so to speak. And it's a great, set piece. It takes place 1977, 1978. And quite fact-based, based on what I've read and what I've heard since then. Some things were tweaked for the movie. Great performance by Ross Lynch, who I believe was like a Disney Channel kid until recently, as Dahmer. Really good performance for him. And some other cast members you might recognize, like Anne Heche plays his sort of troubled mother. Okay. And it's a good coming-of-age tale. It represents the era really well, good music. A T-Rex song that I've never heard in a movie. Anytime it's a T-Rex song in a movie, it makes me happy. I get to hear it in big speakers. And it's also very sad, and it's also really disturbing and chilling at times, because if you know where he's ultimately going to go in his life, you see these little hints of it, and it's really creepy. And there's a moment toward the end where his friend is visiting him at home that was like really chilling to me. I was like, whoa, this is not cool. So I highly recommend this if you can find it. Again, this is in limited release. It's an art house film, so it's not playing everywhere. Again, I saw this at the Alamo in Yonkers. I don't know that it's anywhere near where we are currently, but I would say check it out. It's not terribly graphic, if I recall correctly. It's more just adult themes, as they used to say on HBO.
Right.
That's the disturbing thing when you were a kid and it was an R-rated movie coming up on HBO, and you're like, oh, nudity and violence.
Right.
And it would be like adult themes. I'm like, oh, they're going to talk about like mortgages and stuff.
No. Speaking of adult themes,
yes.
though, I'll jump right into it and take away his apparent ability to segue into it. But we have some adult themes that Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell are trying to deal with. They're in their second movie, not just the two of them, because they've been in lots of other movies, but they're in this second problem and trying to share family relationships and everything, and it's all time to have a holiday together. Unfortunately, their fathers, played by, respectively, Mel Gibson and John Lithgow, come home. And all of the kids know now that Daddy's home too.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, hi.
You're next. No, we reviewed that a long time ago.
Yes,
that's a horror film.
That was, and this one wasn't really. Although
it was a horror.
It was kind of, yeah.
I don't find Will Ferrell funny. He might be a wonderful human being, but I just don't find him, his shtick, I don't find it funny. So I saw the first one and I remember thinking, this is not for me, but I would see another one because the premise has more to it. And unfortunately, they sort of they didn't go further with the original premise so much as try to do it again with...
Yeah, with the parents.
Yeah, and then if there's another one, I'm sure it'll be the mothers. And it's just like, this is the same dumb thing over and over again. So I saw this in a packed theater full of people who were like, I paid too, but they all wanted to see this movie. They all thought it was going to be great. They laughed uproariously at all the trailers that I looked at with my eyes hurting from rolling so much, going, oh my God, it's the end of humanity. This is the movies that people are making now. But people really liked this. And I think if I see an audience filled with people laughing at a comedy, I'm going to, it helps boost it a little bit. So I was okay with this movie. If I watched it alone, I wouldn't have liked it at all. I didn't find it that funny. It had a couple amusing moments, and it was shot well, and it moved right along. And they show John Cena in this as the father of Mark Wahlberg's stepdaughter.
Very good.
And thank you. There's some long division involved with these films. He's not in it that much, so his presence is really only toward the end, and that worked fairly well. Although there's a running gag with "Do They Know It's Christmas," the old Band-Aid song from the mid-'80s, and everybody's singing the song smiling, and I'm like, do you hear the lyrics you're saying?
Exactly, yeah.
You're saying, do they know it's Christmas because they're starving and dying, and everybody's like... And I didn't quite understand that, but I guess that's a cultural thing that people do all the time. They sing Lola and smile. They don't really understand what it's about. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this, but people I were surrounded by did like it, so there.
Recalling the kind of brainlessness of the first one, and I say that knowing that it's a comedy, and so brainless not being negative, but I was really looking forward to this. I love John Lithgow. I like Mel Gibson. I like Farrell and Wahlberg, and they've been in several of.
I was forgetting about that. They were in The Other Guys. Right?
The Other Guys, which I just thought was hilarious. I wish, after leaving this, I kept thinking, why didn't they just take the money and make another Other Guys, for Pete's sake? I thought this had so much potential with these four terrific actors who could really be funny. And they're kind of playing off of Mel Gibson's brusque rudeness and everything. And this was just so pedestrian and mundane. I laughed maybe 3 or 4 times. I was in a theater probably about half filled, so there were probably about 50 or 100 people there. There was a woman across the way from me and behind who was just laughing uproariously. And I felt bad because she's enjoying it. I'm thinking, well, she's really enjoying this. She's getting her money's worth. That's nice, but that wasn't funny. And so I was really pretty disappointed in Daddy's Home 2. I'm not expecting another one, and I don't think this is doing well at the box office. But with the talent that they had available to them, I thought they could have done a lot better.
That is all we have to discuss that we viewed in the theater, over the course of the last 2 weeks. So we thank our friends at the Latches Theatre in Brattleboro, Vermont for being our sponsor and allowing us to see movies there so we can talk to you about them. Now we move on to home video, the format, platform, service of your choice. However you get them into your eyeballs, there are some films that you can watch pretty much now. Up first, we have a film that is the third in a trilogy, if you will, in the series of films about vehicular joy and mayhem from our friends at Dixie Cup Company. They're going into film production now. Disney and/or Pixar. This film is Cars 3.
Our cars need no gas, never get a flat, and are guaranteed for 10,000.
Hi. We're planning next week's show.
Yes, exactly.
So I never saw the original Cars. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
I kind of like the original Cars.
Everybody loves it. I saw the second one for the show on video and didn't like it.
Right.
And this one, I'm not thrilled with it. I don't care about NASCAR, okay? That's what this really is.
Yeah.
Or IndyCar, whatever. If you like, and I don't mean this disparagingly, cars driving around in a circle, if you're a fan of that sport, this is really, I think, who this is for. We were talking off air. I think that movie Turbo is the same way. It's really about that world. And if you're into that, this shows you in a world of cartoon cars, a form of that world that really exists. It looked pretty and all of that, but I just didn't really care that much.
Right.
I mean, maybe if a kid is a fan of these, or again, a fan of auto racing, this is going to be right up their alley. But for me, I didn't really care.
Everything Pixar always looks great. They always have, a full story, and it's moralistic and uplifting. But I've seen this story so many times. The old guy at the old car now who wants to prove that he still got it. So in looking for something for the adults there, I was surprised that there really isn't anything new with this. And so I was really pretty bored by Cars 3. Looks terrific, and if you like them all, you're right, you'll get exactly what you expect. But I had a better time with certainly the original one, because I like Paul Newman so much.
Speaking of Paul Newman, I don't know if he was ever in a film with Woody Harrelson.
Who knows? But there's the possibility over to me. There we go. Brie Larson and has some problems. She's an adult, and she's dealing with growing up with her parents because they had some problems with that. Naomi Watts and Woody Harrelson, the title parents there, who would drag their kids around all over the place because they were squatters. And as soon as the local authorities found out where they were going, off you'd have to run to some new place. It was all a very fragile relationship when you live in the glass castle.
Hey, nobody knows.
Now, more than ever, we can ask, is it live or is it Memorex?
Hi. Based
I
on
like
a true
this.
story?
Yeah, I like this even more on video.
Mm-hmm.
Brie Larson is terrific. I mean, the performances are all great. 3 wonderful actors that I expect to see nominated for this film in particular. Larson is really good. It's really her story. She holds it together really well. Harrelson, I'm to the point now where I'll go see a movie just to see Naomi Watts. I think she's wonderful. So the 3 of them are terrific. It's if there's a drawback to it, and this is so callous, I realize this, but I kind of feel like saying, Yeah, okay, you didn't have the greatest childhood in the world. Deal with it, will ya? Grow up. And that's what she's dealing with.
Yeah.
So if there's a drawback for me to this, it's that about the storyline, but it was, and I knew that going in. So it was certainly worth it to see three what I thought were terrific performances.
So the story basically is, it's this nomadic family led by Woody Harrelson and Naomi Watts who don't really want to put down roots anywhere so much. Like they squat in houses, and I don't mean anything gross. They live in the houses
Right.
Until they're run off, and they try to get by, doing odd jobs or living off garbage or whatever. And eventually, the children realize this is not normal.
Yeah,
This is not
Harrelson's
how you
always
live.
saying, "Look how wonderful the world and freedom is, and all that."
And
right.
you don't need school. You can learn what you want by beating your head against a tree or whatever. So one by one, the children sort of say, we don't want this, and they break free, and you see whether he decides to evolve or grow up as a person or not. And then ultimately, I think it jumps back and forth in time between what is the present, which I think is probably the 80s as far as this film is concerned. I don't recall.
Yeah, I guess.
Back and forth with how they're dealing with, maybe the end of one or more of their parents' lives in the childhood. It's really good. It's kind of depressing. It's upbeat in some ways here and there. It's based on a book and or a series of articles. You see, again, it does what I like about true stories. At the end, you see all the people they were talking about in the film, which is kind of cool to see how close it was, and some actual footage, I think, of these people. So yeah, I thought The Glass Castle was good. It's a good, movie for grown-ups. Not necessarily a happiest film. I might maybe follow it up with a comedy, maybe Slapshot. Why not? Because I love Slapshot, and people need to know more about that. Speaking of, did I do the last one, or you did the last one?
Well, it doesn't matter because the rest of these are yours.
Oh, it's all for me.
Bye.
So,
I'm leaving.
Here we have a reissue of a film from 1953. This is a newly out on DVD from VCI, a company I've liked for many years. And it produced by and starring rock and roll DJ, arguably the man who coined the phrase rock and roll, Alan Freed. People like Chuck Berry and Richie Valens and Eddie Cochran star in a rock and roll tale called Go Johnny Go.
Strawberry Jello instant pudding. Don't put the cellophane wrapper in, it makes it a little gummy.
So I thought this was fun.
Okay.
This is a typical 50s cash-in rock and roll movie. It's like 70 minutes. It's, they were designed to be on a double bill. It was an excuse to get a whole bunch of rock acts of the day in front of a curtain on a stage and have them lip sync a song that was not one of their hits, but what their next single was going to be, to try to promote it, and to get the teenagers in and to clap along and dance in the aisles. Basically, you had Alan Freed, who was Mr. Rock and Roll. He was the guy who coined the phrase, and he was like, Dick Clark was another kind of Alan Freed. And you have Chuck Berry in an acting role, which is highly unusual, and he's okay at it, and he does a couple numbers. And you have Richie Valens, which apparently is the only filmed footage of Richie Valens that wasn't taken from TV. He died not long after this film was shot, but he died before it was released. So in the trailer, they say, the late Richie Valens or something. It's like introducing a dead guy, basically. And there's some other acts you might have heard of. You might have heard of some of their other hits, but not necessarily hits in this movie. VCI's transfer looks fantastic of this. So if there were other copies of this floating around for years from various companies, but this looks perfect. This looks great. It's very set bound, obviously. As you said, it kind of looks like the Dick Van Dyke Show. It kind of feels like a TV show, just in how efficiently it's cut and shot. Apparently, it was the last film shot on the Hal Roach Studios before they sold it off and went away. The star, it's really a vehicle for, I may have his name wrong, I think it's Jimmy Clanton. It's somebody I didn't recognize. Not much of an actor, but decent singing voice. It's all about his, rise, Johnny, his rise to fame. And apparently in the commentary, there's a commentary with 3 historians of rock and roll, and they're like naming off catalog numbers of songs these people put out and deep dish stuff. They mentioned one of the songs that he had released that I'd heard of. I'm like, oh, that's a big song. I thought this was some unknown who'd never done anything they were trying to, push and get out there, which I think to a degree that's what the idea was. But I thought this was fun. It's got a commentary, it's got a trailer, it looks fantastic. It's out now via VCI, and if you like 50s rock, it's a pretty cool. There are a bunch of other movies like this, Don't Knock the Twist and things like that. It's a pretty good one to add to the collection, or just to see a snapshot of what teenagers were being fed and or eating up in the 50s. Speaking of eating up.
Yes, I was going to go someplace like that, but.
It's the Arrow Video Corner. Oh,
there we are again.
Right in his pelvic.
Always me, we got to switch this.
Oh, my Wellman. So here we have, it's a set. This is a 3-movie set that Arrow has just put out of 3 films that George Romero shot, as the title says, Between Night and Dawn. That's the name of the set. It is The Crazies, which some of you may know. There's Always Vanilla, and Season of the Witch. So what we're going to do is play you a little clip that Arrow put together to sort of give you a sense of what this is, and then I will talk about the films and the package.
Looking lashes, double the magic. New day to night mascara from Rimmel London.
What a surprise! There's blood and stuff.
There's blood, yeah.
In a George Romero movie.
This is really cool. For Romero fans, this is like an archival, historical kind of set here. It's 2 out of the 3 movies are movies people don't talk about or even know about, but it bridges the gap between those 2 iconic zombie films that he did. So you have There's Always Vanilla, which is like an arty avant-garde, not really avant-garde, countercultural kind of movie about this young guy he's a rambling guy, and he doesn't want to be tied down, and he pontificates about love and life and the world around him and all that, and it's edited in an interesting way. Apparently, Romero doesn't really like it that much, or didn't. He's no longer with us. Didn't really consider it his own because somebody else, I think, had written it, and he mostly edited and maybe shot it. So it's interesting to see. It was really hard to see for a long time. And it's got the transfer looks great. It's got commentary by a historian. It's got a bunch of extras and interviews with people who were involved with the making of it. So it's a cool context for that. Season of the Witch, that did get a bit of a video release. It's existed under multiple titles. The title on screen here is Hungry Wives, which makes you think it's not what it is. And that's basically about an unsatisfied housewife who decides to dip into witchcraft to see if she can get what she wants, and things don't quite go right. It's pretty talky. It's got moments. It feels that, and There's Always Vanilla. They feel like Romero films in many ways with the editing and the music and a lot of the cast. It's cool to see cast members from Night of the Living Dead in his later films in other roles in these. And then you have The Crazies, which feels a lot like Night of the Living Dead. That's a solid Romero film. That's an outbreak of some kind of disease or some kind of contagion or some kind of toxin, makes people in this town go nuts, and the government's trying to contain it before it gets. That feels just like that. Really bridges the gap between the 2. Transfers we're short on time. Transfers are great. Extras are voluminous. Commentaries. There's an hour-long conversation between Romero and Guillermo del Toro that was shot not long before Romero died, and that's just really cool to see these 2 horror guys just talking shop on a couch for an hour. I don't even know if it even edits very much in it. So I thought this was really interesting. If you're a fan of Romero, it's kind of essential. If you're not a fan of Romero, it's mostly worth it for The Crazies. I think that's the most accessible of the 3.
Is terrific, yeah.
I think if Vanilla and Season of the Witch were not attached to Romero's name, nobody would ever think about them or really care about them. That's what I think personally. So that is out now via Arrow for your consumption. If we want to quickly talk about what we did over our last week.
We could do that.
We both saw.
Big fans of ours. He's not a big fan of ours. We're big fans of George Romero. John Carpenter. Sorry, John.
We saw John Carpenter live.
Yes.
I just saw him last night.
In different places, though.
Yeah, you saw him in Boston.
Yep.
I saw him in Syracuse. His tour just ended. He was playing live with a really good band.
This is terrific, yeah.
Themes from a bunch of his different movies with really cool visuals from the movies.
Because he did a lot of the music for his
He scored most of his films. I think a couple of cuts he mentioned were composed by somebody else, like Ennio Morricone or Jack Nietzsche, I think. But it was really, really cool, and you got the bonus plan.
It was kind of fun. I paid for the meet and greet, and I was late, and so ran back and eventually did get to meet him. That was a nice thing. So
that's really cool. He'll show you the autograph, but it'll cost you $5. Until next time, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.